Hey everybody, welcome to this episode of Think Business. I'm looking forward to talking to Michelle Barr. Michelle, thank you. I know it's 5 a.m. where you are, so thank you for getting up this morning. Author Michelle Barr of the book SoulTeach, which can be found on Amazon.com. Your guide to manifesting what you need, want, and desire. Musings, messages, and magic from someone who walks in both worlds. So let's talk about that. I thought it would be fun to talk about manifesting, and I thought it would be fun to talk about what both worlds means. So let's start there. Right?
Yes.
What are the two worlds?
The two worlds are that I have the real practical, concrete side, and then the very intuitive side. And I've spent my life navigating both of those and going back and forth. I started as a therapist and worked for over a decade as a therapist, but then I started being aware of other ways to work with people and to help people, and became aware of intuitive and alternative gifts that I have. And so I really am always in my strategic, practical, and my energetic, intuitive sides at the same time.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, because I'm the same way. I study my craft. I have every day for the last 30 plus years, but I really listen to my intuitive, where I'm being kind of led to kind of guide the client that I'm working with. So let's talk about listening to your intuition and listening to your gut. So I think a lot of people have the gift, they just don't know how to use it. And so how would you suggest, what's maybe the first step for people to even hear it, trust it, and then move from it?
I really found this a lot when I was working as a therapist, because people have so much mental and emotional clutter that they miss. They think that getting an intuitive message or finding those things are going to be something loud and something big, a trumpet from the sky or the burning bush. And it's really subtle. It's more subtle. And I found that people have so much mental and emotional clutter, they're missing those signs. So you've got to really first deal with what's going on emotionally and mentally. And you have to get control of your mind, because people let their mind run the show. And your mind has a lot of programs and beliefs and conditioning that don't really serve you, especially when you're trying to create success.
Yeah. Think community. We've talked about this a bunch of times on the show, but we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. I think about 80% of them are negative, and 98% of them repeat themselves every single day. I mean, so we wake up really just kind of fighting the fight, unconsciously. And so I love what you're talking about. One of the things, Michelle, I use to kind of clear the clutter out of my brain, which, by the way, a book just popped in my head. Clear Your Clutter with Feng Shui by Karen Kingston is a great book. It's a great book. And I think clearing clutter out of your house and your world really kind of eases up. Anyways, that was a side note, but I use meditation to kind of, get back to center, clear the clutter out of my brain. What are some practical guidance that you would give your clients?
Meditation is a powerful tool. It's all about, I love what you said about that. Yes, repetitive thoughts that then become feelings, that become actions and create your results. And so I really work with people to get clear on what's going on unconsciously, because once you make it conscious and you become aware of it, it loses its power over you. But we're playing out all these relationship patterns and repetitive thought patterns. So it's really doing that deep dive and doing that inner work that lets you then start connecting to the inspiration. You're always getting information from two places. You're either being triggered and you're reacting, or you're being inspired and you're responding. And you want to get to where you're hearing and feeling inspiration and taking inspired, aligned action.
Yeah.
That's how you manifest.
One of the things I always say, I love that you just said that. When I'm talking to clients sometimes, and coaching them, I'll say, children react, adults respond. And so it kind of gets people into a very grounded place to pause and to listen. And so now we're kind of clearing the clutter out of our minds. And let's talk a little bit about manifesting. Your book, SoulTeach, is, your guide to manifesting what you need, want, and desire. I think there's kind of a disconnect sometimes with manifesting, where people think if I think it, it will happen. Well, there is maybe some truth to that, but I think you still have to do the work. And so can you just kind of talk about those two worlds?
I love you bring that up, because I've always been about taking the inspired action, and that's the missing piece for a lot of people. So it starts with your thoughts. Actually, it starts with tapping into what you truly desire, because I believe wherever there's a desire, a way has been made. But then your part is recognizing the opportunities and saying yes to them and stepping into them and taking that inspired, aligned action. And you always have to go first, and then the universe rushes in to meet you. And people miss that.
Right. We have to do our part. So let's talk about that, reverse engineering to our part, because that requires, I think, Michelle, patience, discipline, consistency, right? How do we do our part while being patient? We're in this world right now where delayed gratification is very difficult, but instant gratification is what is desired most. So how do we play the long game when it comes to manifesting?
Yes. And people are always, when you talk about that delayed gratification versus instant, people will sabotage themselves by putting something out there, and then they start telling stories of why it's not showing up yet. And then that works against them. So it is really about getting really clear on what I desire, and then knowing opportunities are going to show up. What happens though is you're not yet a match to that. So when the opportunities show up, a lot of times they're inconvenient, they're uncomfortable, they're going to stretch and grow you. Sometimes they're expensive and illogical. And I have learned to follow what I call those breadcrumbs, because they always bring me to what I want. So it's getting still, and your mind will want to say, this is stupid, this is wrong, this isn't working. And you've got to get your mind out of the way and really pay attention to the opportunities.
Yeah. One of my favorite books that I read, God, Michelle, must have been 25 plus years ago, was The Celestine Prophecy. And when I read it, I'm 50 now, and I was in my early 20s when I read it. And it opened up just a whole new world for me. It just kind of laid out that there are no coincidences, that the universe will put in your path the people that you need to get where you want to go. So I'd like to talk a little bit about that. So if I'm clearing my clutter in my head, and if I'm manifesting what I want, no matter how logical or illogical it is, if I keep going, are you talking about that the universe will put the people I need, even though I don't know who those people are yet?
Yes, and I read that book in my 20s as well, and when I read it, it opened up my whole world.
Yeah.
This is how I believe the world works. It's true. You've got to work on your feelings. Your thoughts create your feelings, but your feelings are the energy and motion that goes out into the world and attracts to you, and you will have those things and people put in your path. And sometimes things can just fall from the sky into your lap, but other times it's going to be an opportunity that brings with it a challenge for you. So here's the other part people get tripped up is people tell stories, and whatever you say is. So you've got to learn to catch the stories that are such habit that you tell them every day, because then you have to live whatever stories you're telling. So
Right.
you've got to change your feelings and the stories you're telling.
Yeah. Right. As a business coach, I talk a lot about also, I'm going to say the same thing in different words, change the narrative, rewrite the narrative.
Yes.
Sometimes I'll ask clients, can you change the past? And they'll say no. And I'll say, well, I think you can if you change your perspective of the past. And so I love what you're talking about. And so let's talk about the name of the book, SoulTeach, right? I read a book. This conversation is making me think of so many books I've read. I read this book 25, 27 years ago, had a huge impact. Gary Zukav, Seed of the Soul. And what it had the biggest impact was there was a line in it that said the ideal human being is when the personality ends and the soul begins, and people don't even know it. And I remember thinking there was a disconnect for me, and that kind of led me to a lot of more inner soul work. And so with the name of your book, hashtag SoulTeach, what are you trying to teach people, and what do people need to learn?
I read that book too. We've read a lot of the same
Yeah.
books. And that's part of that walking in both worlds. I got to a place where I wanted to live my whole life integrated. I used to live my spiritual and personal growth life over here, and then whoever I was in the working world and out in the world here, and really bringing those together. How hashtag Soul Teach came about is I'm a coach and a teacher, author, and speaker, and I've been online for a lot of years, and I use Facebook primarily. And I just started giving little teachings, little things that would make somebody think about something, and they became very popular. And I used the hashtag SoulTeach. So then I went through social media and I pulled to see how many I had, and I had well over 1,000. And I've been putting them out for 3 or 4 years. So I've compiled them into a 365-day book, so that you have one thought a day that you can really reflect on, meditate on, journal on, that is meant to shake you up a little bit and change your perspective. It is about changing the narrative and the perspective, and to carry people through a year of doing that. And you will be amazed at what can change when you do this work, as you know.
And I just want to say the book, and I got a copy. Joan Frank, who is does your PR, is a good friend of my family. She gave me a copy of the book, so thank you very much. But it doesn't matter what day of the year you buy it; the days don't correspond to, like day 1, day 2. You can start it anytime. So I love when books do that. I want to talk about merging the spiritual and the business side, because as a business coach, Michelle, I work with solopreneurs to Fortune companies, C-level execs, leadership positions of all types, managers and salespeople. And I hear this a lot from many, many people who are either very spiritual or very religious, but also very driven in business. And that line, and how they merge that together sometimes can be challenging. And I always kind of back into, it's really good to be a conscious capitalist, right? You can be, because the more money you make, the more people you can actually help. And when I share that with clients, I say, oh, I never thought about it that way. Wait, the more money I make, the more people I can help, right? The more fun I can have, the more I can do, the more people I can help. And so can you kind of talk about how to merge those worlds, right? The spiritual and the business, so you can kind of, monetize both, right? Not that you have to monetize it always and you can have your Zen time, but how can you monetize it?
I love you're bringing that up. It's actually a soapbox issue for me because a lot of my clients have spiritual gifts. They're helpers and healers, where people would say, "Why are you charging for your gifts?" Or people say that whole thing about how can you make money and be spiritual at the same
Yeah.
time? And I had to find my own path with that. And I realized, like you, I worked in nonprofit for years and it burned me out, and I saw what was happening there, and I thought I could go make money and have the freedom to then help people in much bigger ways. There's so much burnout with people that want to help and then they can't take care of themselves. And so I really had to learn the hard business lessons, ended up becoming a business coach, which really surprised me. But I realized you need both that strategic. But here's what I found, that's the big personal and spiritual growth that you find, I'm sure. Building your own business, I think, is the most intensive personal and spiritual growth path that
Yeah.
you could ever enroll in. And it brings up all your stuff
Yeah.
and really stepping into that.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. It's a pleasure to connect with you, and I really appreciate you taking time to be on the show. Your book has so many teachings in it, to take people through an entire year. Is there one particular favorite of yours?
I would say one of the things you'll see repeated throughout that I talk about all the time is this concept of your story, that you've got to really, especially your money stories, but all the stories that you tell on a regular basis out loud that you're then living and that sabotage you. So it's about becoming aware of the stories you're telling and changing those stories, because
Yeah.
whatever you say is. You know, you were talking about the book, you can pick it up anytime and go through a year. I also like books where you don't even have to go in order. You can open the page and
Right.
get a message for the day.
Yeah. Let's pick one. I just
Okay.
opened up to a random one, day 248 out of 365. What if you could truly be the contribution you are here to be, and be supported in doing that by this infinite and abundant universe? You can. It's great.
Yeah.
I love it. Michelle, it's congratulations on your book. Let's do a quick
Thank
speed
you.
round. You ready?
Yes.
Quick speed round. A book that's had the biggest impact on you.
Zero Limits, Dr. Joe Vitale.
So good. Love Joe. But Joe, everything Joe writes and does is great. I love all of his work. That's a great book. Best piece of wisdom you've ever received.
My dreams first, to focus on my dreams first. I didn't learn that early enough.
That's a good one. Finish this sentence. One thing everyone can do to tap into and listen and hear their intuition is.
To take some time to be still.
Love it. Think community. Michelle, thanks so much for being on the show. Think community. We are always looking for that one thing that the guests can share that can get us unstuck. As you know, I'm a business coach. I work with successful people who are stuck. I get them unstuck. This podcast platform is a way for me to bring guests that will continue on my journey to help you get unstuck. Michelle, you shared so many things. I'll extract one thing that resonated deeply with me, which is listen to two things: listen to your intuition and rewrite your story. Right? Own your story and make it your story, not the voices of everybody else. I really appreciate you taking time to be on the show. Thank you to Joan Frank, B Frank PR Communications PR, and tell people how they can buy your book and connect with you, Michelle.
The book is on Amazon. You can go right to soulteachbook.com. You can find me on Facebook, and you can find me at michellebarr.com.
All right, Michelle, thank you very much. Think community. Take some time. I'll just share this before we leave. Take some time and rewrite your narrative. It's not something that you should just leave in your head. One of my favorite stories about Albert Einstein is that people would ask him his phone number and he would go to the phone book and look it up. And they would say, "Mr. Einstein, you're one of the smartest people in the world. You don't know your own phone number." To which he would reply, "I don't like to waste my brain power with information that's easily accessible." So don't rely on leaving it in your head. We have so many thoughts, as we shared earlier. Put it on paper, and the universe then really, as Michelle, you were sharing, and I feel the same way, really begins to work in your favor. Thanks, Michelle, for being on the show. Thanks again to Joan Frank and community. Thank you as always. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you so much.